Commonwealth versus Ronald Saunders.
Judge, I don't have any corrections or additions to this PSI, and I don't have any objections. I would like to ask you to consider probating Mr. Saunders. And Judge, I don't have a great deal to add to what I filed in my motion for probation. I do want to point out he does have, according to his PSI, 507 days of credit. Frankly, I don't think I've ever seen him over that time for PSI. Secondly, as you saw in his motion for probation, when he was in combat overseas, he was instrumental in saving the life of a fellow Marine. Judge, I think that it's worth pointing out exactly what his service consisted of. When he was in Iraq, his job was to go door to door fighting insurgents. There's not a much more dangerous job than I can imagine in the world. He did that honorably for 4 years. As you know, he did get a bad conduct discharge for an assault that occurred once he returned to the United States. But Judge, I think that given his 2 tours in Iraq and the nature of the job that he did over there, you should be given some consideration for that. Up here with him is his mother and the mother of his child, as well as his stepfather, and the judge just has to consider probably.
Judge, the victim's mother would also like to address the court at an appropriate time.
All right. Mr. Saunders, do you have anything you want to tell me?
I think everybody said that, sir.
All right. And the Commonwealth, you say Mr. Hancock, the Commonwealth, has a victim who wants to address the court.
It's the victim's mother, Judge.
Ma'am, you all step aside.
I'd like everybody to know that Conner was a typical healthy 2-year-old little boy. He loved life, his family, Cheetos, and Dora. His smile would brighten any room and lighten your day. He loved to make people laugh and being silly. He would almost always answer our preacher's rhetorical questions on Sunday morning and fill our preacher's dramatic pauses with a song. One time, he even sung Justin Bieber's Baby Baby. He made everybody at church laugh. Conner was abused on the early morning of December 5th. He spent the next 5 days struggling and hanging on to his life. He suffered severe seizures, hypertension, and a slew of other problems. On December 9th, we were informed of the MRI results that Conner had extensive brain damage that included down to his brain stem. I was told that he most likely would never regain conscience, and I was asked permission to turn off his life support. I agreed because I did not want my son to suffer anymore. So for the first time in almost a week, I finally got to hold my son. Shortly after, they turned off his ventilator and removed his breathing tube. He started breathing on his own for a while, and of course we were all still holding on for a last-minute miracle. I was trying so hard not to break down and be strong for him and my family. Just about then, he started to sigh. It was the same sigh he'd had since the day he was born. He would sigh just the same way when he was tired, when he didn't get his way, when he was mad, aggravated, or disappointed. Then he sighed again and took another breath. I told my sister I couldn't do this anymore, and I wanted him to stop. He continued to breathe for several minutes, and then his blood pressure and his heart rate started increasing, and the doctors and nurses came back to the room, and I had to give him several medicines to make him more comfortable during his passing. They informed me that most loved ones hang on to try to pacify their loved ones, and they asked me to tell him that it was okay to say goodbye and to tell him to rest. I did not want to because I was not ready to let him go. Finally, after several minutes, I told him that I knew he was tired and he had been so brave and strong, so he needed to rest and it was okay. In just a few minutes of uttering those words, he stopped breathing. And I tried to take him back because I was not ready for him to go. It was too late. So I just started screaming at the top of my lungs that I wasn't ready for him to die, and how much I loved him, and how sorry I was because I didn't know what type of person Ron was. I forgot to hold him for the next several hours until the medical examiner's office was there to pick him up. At this point, I was mentally and physically exhausted. I only slept a few hours the whole entire week. So I placed Conner back on the hospital bed and had to walk out of that room, knowing that I would never hold him again. I would never see his smile, hear his giggle, or have him rock me and sing to me rock-a-bye baby. Although it was just a few steps leaving that room, it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Some of Conner's injuries were 114 puncture wounds, 48 on the right foot and 41 on the left foot, an abrasion to the top of his ear, a busted and swollen lip, bruises on the left cheek, small cut and bruise on the forehead, bruising on the right side of the neck, blunt force head and facial injuries, particular hemorrhages on both sides of his neck, 2 large bruises on his back, a bruise on the top of his left lung, internal bleeding of his organs, and a thumbtack was removed from the top of his stomach. He suffered severe brain damage and brain stem damage. So I do not understand how in the world the Commonwealth Security Office can accept a non-violent charge, which labels this a non-violent crime, and Ron a non-violent offender. This is beyond me. I don't understand how this crime fits this charge. And I don't understand how it's possible that Ron can be eligible for parole in less than a year. In Ron's own confession to his cellmate, he admits to the pain and sure torture of my own son. But this is not the first time that Ron has abused little boys. After the passing on December 10th, I was informed of several other instances where Ron has abused children. On December of 2005, he was charged by North Carolina Social Services with the abuse of a 1.5-year-old little boy. The cases had similarities that were startling. Through the Sheriff's Office investigation, and Detective Moyers discovered that Ron has a long history of abuse that ranged from several children to 3 of his fellow Marines, which resulted in his dishonorable discharge. So I'm begging you, Your Honor, to recommend that his parole be completely revoked. The only sense of security that my family and I have is if this violent offender stays behind bars where he belongs. Mr. Saunders took my baby away from me, and my other 4 children, and the rest of our family. We will never see his smile or hear his sweet voice again. I will never be able to watch him grow up or hold him, and that's all because of this man. I look forward to him staying locked up as long as possible, because there he can only pick on someone his own size instead of little boys. I vow to continue to seek justice for Conner and my family. Thank you.
I know quite a bit about this case, as you know, because I heard the evidence, Mr. Saunders, and you have pled guilty pursuant to North Carolina versus Alfred, but I'll tell you, I wouldn't have had any problem convicting you had I been a juror of this crime. You're not fooling me. You know, I've been doing this for a long time, and as one of our first memories as children is we're afraid of monsters. Here, this little boy, 2 years old, ends up, through no fault of the little boys, with a monster next to him who violently causes his death. Unfortunately, it's the nature of child abuse cases, which I've prosecuted for a lot of years, that they are difficult to prove. And as a result, you're getting off very easily for what you've done. Punishment truly doesn't fit the crime for the violent nature of this 2-year-old child's death who did nothing but cry and bother you. And you know, I understand being in the military. I was never in the military, but my father was in the military. He was in combat. He never has bought into this idea of somehow that causes people to snap and that's an excuse for torturing and killing a baby. I don't buy it either. On your guilty plea, Mr. Saunders, I'll sentence you to 10 years on count 1, second-degree manslaughter. The sentence that you and the Commonwealth have reached. Forfeit all seized items. I consider probation conditional discharge, but I'm denying those because of the circumstances of this crime, the violent death of a 2-year-old child, innocent child, and under the circumstances and with your record, my belief that to probate this one, duly depreciate the seriousness of the crime, that you're in need of correctional treatment best provided by the Department of Corrections, and that you would likely commit another offense while on during the period of probation. What are his court costs?
$155, sir.
Money to pay that, Mr. Saunders? I will discharge this court cost.